Race swapping is when a character of a TV show, game, comic book, novel, or any other type of media gets doused with a bucket of either black or white paint, usually black, and they get put on stage like that one episode of SpongeBob where the crowd stops cheering when they see Squidward's hand. And every time a character gets painted over, there are understandably going to be a lot of people getting mad over it, and understandably so. A fan favorite character has now been altered in a way that you weren't expecting. Depending on who it is, the audience response might be extremely positive or extremely negative, and you're always going to have racists and race grifters acting like their entire bloodline is being erased whenever a character is race swapped. But this is not going to be a whole video where I dismiss every single criticism of race swaps as just being racism, nor is it going to be a video where I condemn every race swap that has ever gone on as being, the big nose people. Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. This is going to be a rather surface level analysis of race swapping based on properties that I have watched myself. One thing you might hear a lot when it comes to race swaps is that race doesn't matter. This is actually false, because if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, if race doesn't matter, then why can't Ryan Gosling play Black Panther? You can't say it's because of his race. He could just be a Wakandan with vitiligo. South Africans exist. Who's to say his family didn't immigrate to Wakanda thousands of years ago and just so happened to live in a place full of other South Africans who are also very fair-skinned? You can't say that didn't happen. And the multiverse exists, so statistically it's had to have happened once. So race does matter, but there's a few prerequisites. First, the character can only be white or a redhead for some reason. For real, like there must be some sort of redhead erasure conspiracy going on. Ariel, Velma, Jimmy Olsen. What did the redheads do? Now, this isn't to say that black characters have never been race swapped to white, because obviously this isn't true. That's where the term whitewashing came from in the first place. But ever since the early 2000s, I genuinely task you to finding race swaps that don't replace a white person with any other race, and vice versa. They're there, but extremely rare. It's no secret that Hollywood has been thoroughly infected with identity politics, full of people erroneously mad at whoever they perceive to be the most privileged. White people have been at the top of this list for a long while, so artistic decisions like this fall in line with their ideology. The second prerequisite is that it rarely, if ever, happens to the lead or main character, as film directors know damn well that if they race swap the star of the show, they get hit with tons of backlash. If we look at a show like CW's Flash, the Flash movie never happened by the way, Iris West and her family were race swapped. The Flash himself was spared. Why? Because the producers understand that his silhouette, the way he looks, is important. You'll never see Jamaican Superman, Asian Batman, Indian Wonder Woman. You won't see these things because they're so iconic that Warner Brothers would never allow their most popular characters to be changed unless it's in a scenario where the original isn't available, like Batwoman filling in for Batman in the CW-verse. This shows me that the people at the top seem to understand that race and outward appearance of a character does matter, but they're hesitant to admit it when it comes to white characters specifically, as to not invoke the wrath of the progressives. A quick analogy of what I'm trying to say. If I take Peter Parker and make him black, and not even changing his backstory, let's just say that the original Peter Parker got aborted after his mom fell down the stairs, and his aunt and uncle adopted a black kid when he was a baby, and named him Peter after the aborted kid. Yo, I was tired as shit when I wrote this, bro. Anyways, that's not important. Let's make Peter Parker black. And no, I'm not talking about Miles. He is a different Spider-Man in this hypothetical universe. So we can agree that making Peter black doesn't add anything tangibly positive or take anything away tangibly negative from the story. So if that's true, why make that change at all? Why not save the ink and not change him? But wait, are you saying that diversity is bad? Aren't you black? How could you say that? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, quite simply, diversity is overrated. I'm saying that diversity itself has a value that's derived solely from how it's used. Even the value of seeing someone who looks like you on the big screen, that's purely subjective. Diversity can be used in great ways, like taking characters from all around the world and making them fight in a fighting game, or having people from all walks of life on a superhero team. But there are also times where diversity breaks immersion, especially in settings that are supposed to be somewhat realistic. For instance, if we take a remote fantasy village near a mountain, I'd expect the remote village to have mostly one ethnicity. It certainly wouldn't be as diverse as the city because less people come here. So if I walk into this village in a video game, and instead of seeing all black people or all white people, I see a corporate mix of every race on Earth, I'd be wondering how the fuck a German guy and an Indian woman are caring for a Japanese kid. This hypothetical family makes no coherent sense unless they adopt it, but now you have to explain how adoption works works in this fantasy world, and no one cares about this shit unless it's a side quest in a Bethesda game. I came here to fuss Rodin over the magistrate and save his beautiful daughter, and now I'm stuck wondering about the family affairs of some NPCs that I bumped into. Unless there's a plot reason why everyone's race was chosen via spinning a wheel, then it makes me doubt the designers of the game have ever left Portland or San Francisco. Writing off criticism. Race swaps that happen in shows are often hard to criticize because of how easy it is to write off any negative sentiment towards a person of color as racism, even if there's no solid proof for that claim. The person has to put themselves in a position where they have to prove on the fly that they aren't racist, which is basically impossible for anyone to do unless you're capable of reading minds. Normally we'd give people the benefit of the doubt because of this, but all of a sudden that vanishes when you might possibly be saying something bad about a colored person. If you're watching the most recent Harry Potter trailers and say, hey, wait a minute, Snape wasn't black in the books, you're inevitably getting hit with the race doesn't matter, why are you complaining line, even though we've already gone over why race in fact does matter. Another example, Annabelle from the Percy Jackson show. This girl is a great actress, she plays the role very well, she has a promising future. The show loses nothing by casting her. I loved the show and I thought it was a great season, and I'm currently waiting for the next one. But that does not invalidate the criticisms of fans. In the book, she was described as a white girl with braided blonde hair, and pardon me, no hate, but this is not a white girl with braided blonde hair. The scriptwriters clearly stuck to Rick Riordan's vision when casting Percy and Grover, so it makes it obvious that choices like this are deliberate, and in my opinion, all deliberate choices should be fair ground for criticism. Race swaps are often gotten away with mostly because the person criticizing the race swap has to admit that they have a problem with the race of the character, and despite having an issue with someone being chosen who doesn't fit the description, it's a very easy manipulation technique to even if the advertisements for said product bragged about having a dedication to the source material. A lot of the times, when a character is race swapped, they'll have certain parts of their personality or backstory changed to make them being that race more realistic. For instance, in the Fantastic Four movie, the Human Torch and his father are black, so they made it so Sue was adopted by them. This is an overall inferior version of the backstory because it adds unnecessary complications to achieve the exact same outcome. They're still siblings, but they're not blood related, and they aren't nearly as close as they were originally. That whole movie is quite possibly the weirdest interpretation of the Fantastic Four that I've ever seen. Another weird thing I want to tack on about race swapping is that it's a much bigger problem when the actor doesn't actually resemble the character. For instance, in the original Fantastic Four movies, Sue Storm was played by a Latina, but you probably didn't know that because, let's be honest, she looks like she was ripped right off the page. This tells me that race swapping is mostly a matter of outward appearance. No one really cares if you cast a Pakistani person to play an Indian superhero. Y'all look the same, bruh. But if you want a white guy to play Black Panther, now we've got a problem. And yes, I'm only bringing this up again to show you guys this image. Shit's hilarious. Another example that comes to mind, the most recent Superman act is actually half Ashkenazi Jewish. Does anybody care? Well, some people might, but yeah, this is technically a race swap because Superman is usually just a white dude. Also, he's an alien, so technically anyone playing him is a race swap, but don't think about it too hard. Okay, so to wrap this up, what am I getting at? Why have I just spent 8+ minutes yapping about the ethnicities of fictional characters? The first takeaway is that if we're talking about someone to which race matters a lot, it's much better to create a new character with your preferred characteristics than just taking a figurine off of your shelf and covering it with paint. But wait, people are constantly trying to make more diverse characters, and they rarely if ever get the fanfare of the original. This must be evidence of racism. While it may be evidence of racism, it is rarely if ever proof of it. Even racists will become colorblind if you give them a reason to enjoy the product being served, to relate to it. A lot of characters that are made with diversity in mind are made with their identity first, instead of being an interesting character first. They'll center the character around and have them constantly mention and bring up their identity, which normal people don't, or at least shouldn't be doing constantly because it comes off as narcissistic. In addition, a lot of OCs that are diverse simply don't rock with people because they aren't relatable or don't seem interesting enough to the average person. For instance, a polyamorous communist trans woman of color isn't as relatable as just a random black girl. Making the identity more in-depth and interesting does not translate to making a more interesting character. The second takeaway is that race swapping has, in recent years, been much more likely to happen to white characters because of a mentality that there aren't enough of us, of colored people, in fiction, specifically to cater to the modern audience. But if it were happening the other way around, it would be correctly identified as being unacceptably racist. These double standards are a big reason why content that has a focus on diversity has been getting rejected, because a lot of people hear diversity as no white people allowed. And just as I wouldn't go to a store that says whites only, why engage in something created by someone who clearly doesn't like you? In my opinion, race swaps are a tool to be used sparingly. Sometimes race swaps are even necessary. For instance, if not enough high quality actors of a specific ethnicity can be found, or the ones who are there don't fit the bill. But they've been getting overused recently as an excuse for movie creators to push their politics and challenge anyone who disagrees with these changes as being racist. But art should be created not out of spite for people we can all agree are bad, but out of passion and love. Shows like Velma and others where iconic characters are altered are usually done out of a need to own the chuds. But why not make a great show and let the chuds seethe? That is my opinion. And if you enjoyed, like, subscribe, leave a comment, because I have not been sticking up to my upload schedule. Discord, Insta, TikTok, all in the description. Bye.
I was just a kid in the suburbs doing alright. Then I became a young nigga overnight. When I catch low it's gonna be on site. 4.5s and ARDs. Up in the trenches with my new family. And a gang that's built on loyalty.